I'd like to start a shared kitchen. What do they do? Go talk to Chris at Feed Kitchens, because that's the premier space in the state. That 1 ton of food that we did at Epic Systems that we thought was so great pales in comparison to things that we have done since then. It was major and it was noticeable. And in fact, the Isthmus even ran a story. Where are all these bakers coming from? We are not just the food cart place. So I'm glad you said that, because people drive by there and they see all the food carts parked outside. That's the food cart place. It's like, it is so much more. Hello, I'm Chris Brockel, and I am the Food Systems Director for Madison Northside Planning Council. And basically that means that I manage Feed Kitchens on the north side, a food business incubator, and Healthy Food for All, which is a food recovery program, and Feed Bakery and Training, which operates within Feed Kitchens as well. And I'm happy to be here today on the Layered Onion. I am a longtime Madison resident. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin, Poinette. And my professional life has been pretty much dedicated to working in nonprofits. I graduated from UW-Madison with a bachelor's degree in secondary education. Never got a teaching job and ended up in food systems work. I have developed adult education programs early in my professional career. And then when welfare reform came and training meant go get a job for people that were on AFDC, I was laid off. And so I was looking for a job, and I had management experience, got a job at Community Action Coalition managing their food and gardens division. I didn't know anything about food systems per se, other than the fact that I bagged groceries at a grocery store when I was in high school, and grew up in a small town, so I knew a little bit about gardening and farming. Right, worked on baling hay mostly, but also gardened. But that's what I knew, and I jumped in and developed a passion for that work, and ended up working at CAC for 11 years. I left CAC to be the executive director at Fair Share CSA Coalition. I was there for about a year and a half. It wasn't a great fit for me, so left there and started Healthy Food for All food recovery program, working with local farms, collecting excess produce and getting it to people in need. Feed Kitchens had opened previous to that. They were struggling a bit. The executive director of Northside Planning Council called me up, asked me to be on the board to help them right the ship at Feed Kitchens. So I started there on the board. During that time, they got a grant from the USDA, Local Food Promotion Program grant. They needed someone to work in it. I said, I will do the job until you find somebody. And that was 10 years ago. So here I am now, the director of food systems and managing Feed Kitchens. So when I was at Fair Share is a network of organic CSA farms that are across south central Wisconsin, all the way west to the Mississippi River and east almost to Milwaukee. And during that time, I got to know a lot of these farmers, and in talking to them, because I had come out of the emergency food system program, talked to them about, their excess, what they do with it, do they donate it, do they process it, what happens. And time after time, I heard they would love to donate it, but they didn't know where to send it, or they would talk to Second Harvest Food Bank and what they had to offer. Second Harvest would not come and pick up because it wasn't enough at any single farm. So we sort of saw an opening there, that there's available produce right outside the city limits, or in some cases inside the city, if urban ag, that was not finding its way to people's tables. And so really looked to kind of correct that and come up with a system that could work with these farms and gather that produce. Because we're really interested in feeding as many people as possible, but also with the best available food that we could give them. One of the knocks on food pantries, of course, and I think it's changed over time, but I'm pretty sure it's still fairly consistent, is that they tend to hand out sort of highly processed, high salt foods that aren't necessarily good. They sustain you, but they don't necessarily advance your health or help your health. And so that's kind of what we were looking to do. We started in the summer of 2015 doing that. And at the end of the summer, we got a call from Epic the worldwide users group saying, hey, we have this activity that we bring 10,000 people in and we wine and dine them and there's always extra food. If we donate that to you, do you think you could do something with it? And I hemmed and hawed and really didn't want to do it, to be honest with you. But I talked to a couple other people, and there was a benefactor that stepped forward and said, we'd like you to do this, and I will pay you to do it and buy the packaging. And so we decided to do it, brought food into feed kitchens. It was a commercial kitchen, so we could kind of start triaging the food and figuring out what to do with it versus, because it came to us in bulk packaging, 5-gallon buckets and big pans. We broke that down into individual size packaging and handed it out to folks, and it was highly successful. I think that during that week, we did about a little over a ton of food that we rescued and thought that was the greatest thing in the world. A few weeks after that, we got a call from Epic asking if we would want to do that on a weekly basis, that they actually would fill a truck and send it directly to feed kitchens and drop things off, and we would triage it. A lot of it was soup. We'd put it into quarts. They gave us the recipes so we could put labels on all the food, and then get it out into the food system. And that's how we started. And that 1 ton of food that we did at Epic Systems that we thought was so great pales in comparison to things that we have done since then. But we learned a few things doing it. Pre-COVID, over the years, we've built a number of entrepreneurs who are working there, right? So people find out about it. They want to start a business. They learn that feed kitchens is the place to go. If they go to public health and say, hey, I want to start a business, how do I get licensed? The first thing they're going to say is you need to be in a commercial kitchen. Oh, how do I do that? Go to feed kitchens, right? So we became the referral source to feed kitchens. Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection, state of Wisconsin. People around the state. I want to either get licensed or I'd like to start a shared kitchen. What do? Go talk to Chris at Feed Kitchens, because that's the premier space in the state. Kind of scares me sometimes when they say that's the premier, because I see the ugly underside of it. But it's a great space. I don't mean that at all. We existed. We built membership post-pandemic. Our members, we have 90 vendors, entrepreneurs that are operating out of feed kitchens. We are basically at capacity. We struggle to take new members in right now until we can move other members out. Depending on what people want to do there, we may be able to fit people in, but if people want to come in and just kind of do major food cart business or catering business, we just aren't going to have space for them right now. So pre-pandemic, we probably had about, between 60 and 70 vendors. Post-pandemic, we're up to 90. Why? What happened, right? You would think just the opposite. When the pandemic hit, people left feed kitchens. That place was a ghost town, right? Because who was buying food on the streets? Nobody. Mm-hmm. People were staying at home. And so things got really dead there. Then they started to pick up. Why did they start to pick up? The first thing was bakers. So we always had, our own bakery and some other little bakeries going on there. Our bakery kitchen right now, and Feed is a 24/7 facility, operates almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's a vendor in there. Why is that? Because when people were at home during the pandemic, what did they do? They started dabbling in cooking and baking and sourdough starters, and then they found some success, right? They served their stuff to other people and oh yeah, this is good. You should start a little business. And suddenly they were finding their way to feed kitchen. The other thing that sort of pushed bakers is the home baking laws in Wisconsin, right? Mm-hmm. So a few years ago, the law changed that you could sell products made at home up to earnings of $25,000, which is pretty major, right? So people could start a business at home without a commercial kitchen, but then as that business would grow, they would realize I'm outgrowing my kitchen, or their family would tell them, mm-hmm. You're outgrowing that kitchen, get out of here. You need to go somewhere else. Then they find their way to feed. And so during the pandemic, that first wave of new vendors were bakers. And it was major and it was noticeable. And in fact, the Isthmus even ran a story. where are all these bakers coming from? And then came the food trucks, and did they ever come? And why? Because folks were working in restaurants and tired of working for somebody else, and probably tired of the whole pandemic, food service worker, and you're my hero, and suddenly you're not my hero anymore now that the pandemic is over. We said, I want to take control of my own life, right? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this for myself and not for somebody else. And so just food truck business after food truck business, it just grew tremendously to the point where a year and a half ago, I got onto a Zoom call with both Madison Public Health and DATCAP all on the same call, so that we were all sort of sharing the same and hearing the same information, which was basically, Chris, we will not license another food cart in that facility, so don't even try. I knew that at the time. I could feel the pressure, right? And so that's where we're at right now. And so that has been the growth, really. Bakers, food carts, caterers, a little bit less so in packaged products. If people want to make packaged products, we have space for them to do it. So we had Tony from Cafe Costa Rica, who runs a food cart, does catering, but also makes these sauces. And these sauces are sold at Willie Street Co-op and Brennan's and other places. People love them. But when we talk about packaged products, this is what we're talking about. Stuff that goes in a package, gets labels, has shelf stability, and can be bought at other places. We have room for folks like that because they don't take up a lot of time and space at feed kitchens. For instance, this is a new product, Chinese chili sauce. Peanut chili sauce that's being developed by somebody, and will be on hopefully shelves soon. But this is the kind of thing that folks that make a packaged product come in and they put in a lot of time in spurts. So they'll come in and if they're making sauces, they might spend 2 days, 1 day just cooking that sauce down, making it. Second day, getting into packages, labels, and boom. Then they have their inventory. Now their job is to go out and sell that inventory. When that is sold, then they will come back and make more. So they are not daily participants in the chaos of feed kitchens, right? When we have food trucks and caterers and bakers there, but they do fit in. What was their thought process? Yeah. That's a good question because a lot of people ask it. And, Northside Planning Council started in the early 90s along with 4 other planning councils in the city of Madison. It was an initiative of the mayor at the time, Paul Soglin, to put planning councils into lower income neighborhoods or neighborhoods that needed some assistance in kind of picking themselves up, coordinating projects and doing things. And so Northside Planning Council was one of them. Very small organization, published in Northside News, had an executive director, maybe not even one other FTE, maybe some consultants and a part-time player. But the president of the board of directors was Ellen Bernard. Ellen Bernard is a local entrepreneur who started A Woman's Touch. And what we know about Madison is it's a foodie city. This is the early 2000s. Farmers markets were growing. There was more interest in sort of the farm to table movement, local restaurants that were doing farm to table, more and more grocery stores starting to feature local produce, and farmers bringing it in. And so the thought was we need to build the system. We have a great system, but it's not complete. What would help make it complete is a central facility where all this great produce that's being grown right around the city can be processed and preserved for use at other times of the year other than August, September when it's being harvested. And so that was the idea. And certainly Ellen was not the only person in Madison who had that idea, but in typical Madison fashion, people like to talk about things, but there's rarely movement on things, or movement takes a long time, let's say that. And so she decided that it should be Northside Planning Council. They would do that. And so they started doing the planning, fundraising, I think in earnest in 2008. Feed Kitchens opened officially in November of 2013. Some would say that Feed Kitchens has certainly expanded the reach of the Northside Planning Council, because Feed Kitchens is not a Northside facility specifically. It lies on the north side, but it serves South Central Wisconsin. We have folks that come from all over, right? Belmont, Beloit, Fort Atkinson, Baraboo, you name it. So you're coming in, and so we created this little agency on the north side of Madison. Suddenly became a regional agency, and has expanded the reach, the budget, the administrative tasks, all that for the Northside Planning Council. Well, people aren't necessarily going to like my answer, but probably the biggest evolutionary piece is so we talked about feed being built because it was a place to process stuff that was being grown right around the city or in the city to make it available. So the idea was that farmers would end up there processing food, taking their cucumbers and converting them into pickles that could be sold in January. The reality is that doesn't happen as much as people might think or might hope that it happens. And so when you look at the beginnings of Feed Kitchens and read